This is the incredible story of the day God spoke to Moses, and the entire nation of Israel heard his booming voice. But what exactly happened on that day? Why should we care about this ancient account today? They come to rest at the foot of a majestic mountain called Horeb, or Sinai, and it was here that something extraordinary took place. A towering flame appeared atop the mountain, which consumed the top without actually setting it on fire. In fact, the whole nation of Israel gathered at the foot of the mountain and witnessed this theophany, a direct manifestation of God in physical form. They had heard rumors of a great and powerful God who had delivered them from their oppressors in Egypt. But as God continued to speak, giving them laws and commandments for how they were to live, the people became terrified and cried out to Moses, begging him to intervene and speak for them. He climbed up the mountain and received the 10 Commandments from God, which he then delivered to the people. These commandments were not just a set of rules and regulations. They were a divine covenant between God and his people. Fasting is a form of purification and self-discipline, and it shows a person's commitment to God. If the mountain was literally on fire, why didn't it burn up completely? This detail adds to the significance of the mountain as a place where God reveals himself and gives his law. They became the foundation of divine law, influencing Judaism, Christianity, and Islam for millennia. It's the basis of the Jewish religion, and it's a foundational story for Christians as well. The giving of the law is a major theme in the Old Testament, and it shows how God desires to have a relationship with his people. The first 4 commandments dealt with their relationship with God, while the last 6 outlined how they should treat each other. These commandments were not just for the Israelites. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe so you never miss out on our future videos. Thank you for watching, and until next time, may the peace of God be with you. Just as God spoke to Moses on that mountain, he speaks to us today through his word and through the Holy Spirit. The 10 Commandments are still a standard for how we should live, and they remind us of the importance of having a relationship with God. Let's take time to listen to what God is saying to us and to obey his commands. Let's also remember that God is a consuming fire, a symbol of his holiness and his otherness. Let's approach him with reverence and respect, knowing that he is worthy to be praised and feared. They were a revelation of God's will for all humanity. Well, ancient traditions say that the fire didn't consume the mountain or the bush before, because it wasn't just an ordinary fire. It was a miracle. It was a supernatural occurrence that defied the laws of nature. The fire was a sign that God was present on the mountain, and that it was his presence that caused the fire to burn without consuming. In other words, the mountain was not burning up because God was controlling the fire. He was causing it to burn but not consume, and that was a miracle in itself. By fasting, one can get rid of all the impurities and distractions of life and focus on God alone. So the burning fire served as a reminder for Moses and the people of Israel that God was a holy and majestic being who should be treated with reverence and respect. It was a symbol of the purity and dedication that was required to approach him, and it was a reminder of the awesome power that he possessed. They outlined how the people were to live and what was expected of them. If they wanted to have a relationship with God, they told him, "Speak to us, O Moses, and we will listen, but do not let God speak to us lest we perish." They knew that if they heard the voice of God any longer, they would not be able to withstand it. It was too powerful and overwhelming for them to bear. But nothing had prepared them for this. Here was God revealing himself to them in all his glory and power. This burning fire attracted the attention of Moses, who was a humble shepherd tending his flock nearby. The fire is described as being both a consuming fire and a fire that does not consume. It may seem contradictory, but this is because the fire had a dual meaning. On one hand, it represented God's holiness and his otherness. It showed that he was a being who should not be taken lightly, and that he was separate from his creation. The fire was a reminder that God was not a campfire to gather around and joke and jest, but a holy and majestic being who should be respected and revered. Suddenly, a brilliant light filled the sky, and a voice boomed out from above them, echoing with such power that it seemed to shake the very heavens. It showed that sin and impurity could not stand in God's presence, and that those who wanted to come near to him had to be cleansed and purified first. This is why Moses had to wash his clothes and put on sandals made of leather, When he went up the mountain to meet with God, the fire was a symbol of the kind of purity that was required to be in God's presence. The people cowered in fear as they heard the voice of God thundering down on them. It was as if the mountain itself was collapsing before their eyes, and they could not bear to look upon it. He was drawn to the mountain like a magnet and went to investigate what was happening there. Well, let's dive into the fascinating details. And don't forget to like this video and share it with your friends afterwards. The year is 1290 BC, and the Israelites have just escaped from slavery in Egypt and are wandering in the wilderness. As he got closer, the ground beneath his feet trembled and rumbled like thunder. The air crackled with electricity, and bright flashes of lightning illuminated the sky. A thick gray smoke billowed out from the mountain, obscuring its peak from view. And above it all, a loud blast of a trumpet echoed across the wilderness, shaking the very foundations of the mountain. Moses was overwhelmed by what he was witnessing. The sight of the blazing fire against the backdrop of the stormy sky filled him with a sense of awe and fear. But he wasn't the only one who saw and heard these terrifying wonders. As they stood there watching and listening, the sound of thunder grew louder and more intense, shaking the mountain and rattling their bones. And now God began to speak, declaring, "I am the Lord, your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage." So Moses acted as an intermediary between God and the people. Now let's take a closer look at the burning fire that played a significant role in this event. On the other hand, the fire also symbolized the purity that was required to approach God. In fact, according to the Quran and the Bible, Moses fasted for 40 days and nights before he received the sacred tablets of stone containing the 10 Commandments. Now, here's a question you might be wondering. Some commentators have also noted that the burning bush that Moses saw earlier, as described in Exodus 3, was the same bush that was on fire when he encountered God later on. And speaking of the 10 Commandments, they weren't just a set of rules for the Israelites. The event at Mount Sinai is one of the most important stories in the Bible. As we reflect on this incredible encounter between God and Moses, let's remember that we too can have a relationship with God. And finally, let's remember that the giving of the law on Mount Sinai was not just an event in the past. It has implications for us today. And that concludes our journey back in time to the remarkable event when God spoke to Moses atop a mountain.